Strategies are in top gear, and the state is committed to ensure that the mass action that Azimio la Umoja called on Monday do not really happen. In this analysis, I want us to look at what so far is happening, but then there is an interesting twist to why the Western nations that William Ruto has been asking to help him tame Raila seems to have turned their back on the Kenyan government. Let's start here. Kisumu Deputy Governor Matthews Awili, who participated in the Monday demos, just learned on Friday morning that his security details had been withdrawn. And so he's planning to get private security for himself. There was also an attempt to censure live coverage of the Monday mass action by media. And the letter that came from CAK was then thwarted when High Court gave some injunctions against such a move. So on that, the court helped to create what we can say as restraint. Grassroots mobilizers, Nuru Kanga, Gaucho, and some other members of rather the Bunge la Wananchi were arrested. I understand some are still in custody, yet to be presented in court next week. Nuru Kanga and Gaucho were whisked to DCI headquarters there, where the Azimio la Umoja sent Danstan Omari especially to push on their release, in what is signaling a move that is seen as trying to scare the masses from turning out. The DCI is also coming out to share photos, some of which are according to them, are protesters, but then I've seen them coming back to clarify that the photos that they shared, there was a bit of confusion because they are receiving huge loads of photos of protesters. But there are two intentions into it. There is one intention here is that those who are the masses that could turn out will then fear to come out because of fear of being trailed. But according to me, it works also well because it will tame those protesters that normally just take that opportunity, and for them they think about robbing other people's things. So for me, it's also blessings in this case. However, there is a threat to it. It's also a threat to journalism. It's a threat to photojournalists. What do you expect? Do you think protesters are going to accommodate photojournalists if they understand that from it probably will you separate between a journalist and a spy and just someone who's just taking a photo? So some of the journalists that will be taking photos will find it very difficult because of that, because protesters will fear that maybe their photos will get their way to DCI, and it's a very delicate move that also risks the life of the journalists. William Ruto has decided to confront Raila Odinga in Migori, and in his line of attack, he is saying that Raila is insensitive of people's businesses in Nairobi, and so that is, according to them, that the demos do not have a tangible push, but just a ploy to distract people's property. So even if that will be, who will just take people to destroy other people's properties? Even if that will be, I looked at it that simplistic. However, there is one that has been causing, and I was reading different articles today, and the writers are questioning what is really happening, because Raila Odinga is moving and it seems to be charging, is not dropping anything on the way. But the Kenya Kwanza tried to ask the Western nations to sanction Raila Odinga, to put sanctions on Raila Odinga, claiming that he was causing chaos. Kindly subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell and like our video. Thank you very much for those who are supporting us. So those sanctions came, and according to reports is that Raila is supposed to fly out of the country for, I think, next to 1 week, according to what I was reading. And it's pointing into, and he's supposed to head to Europe, by the way. So it's pointing into, is it really been blocked? Are there those sanctions or the red alerts that people are asking to be put on him? That is not to be there. There are also loads of letters that were written to ICC as international body to, I don't know, investigate what's happening in the country so that they can apprehend some leaders that are responsible for whatever is going on. No single reply on such letters. Even there was another letter written to the diplomatic missions trying to speak about what Raila Odinga is saying, try to turn them, rather try to convince them on what Raila Odinga is saying. The opposition wing also wrote another letter, a rebuttal, but the Western nations are silent on what William Ruto has been asking them to be sanctioned. And so the question, bit of my peers and what we're actually asking is, why do you think that they are so slow into, or rather they have rejected the calls by the government to sanction Raila Odinga? Recently, I think that was on Wednesday, Speaker Moses Wetangula met with the ambassador, the Norway ambassador. And the Norway ambassador tried to ask him about the impact of the ongoing demonstrations to Parliament, or rather to the government of Kenya. And that points out, for me, I saw his response was very different. In fact, he did not even respond to the question for him. He was saying that Raila is a popular candidate, is a very good person on ground, but it's just terrible when it comes to organization of a campaign. So that's what he answered. I don't think that is something that he said about the demo. So what is really happening here is there have been these calls. Remember, it's not new. Even Raila once asked the Commonwealth to intervene into some of these things that were happening here to give to help in the questions of servers and here and there. So what do you think is behind the fact that despite of these calls for the Western nations to sanction Raila Odinga, that has not been affected, and there is no sign that is even coming? That might be an intervention. For me, it was trying to test the waters into what exactly is happening. But I want to point out something. There is what is called the power of the people. Look at what happened in Senegal. When the opposition leader was arrested, the population went and released him from the jail. That is the power of the people. And for those who've been talking about we can arrest Raila, we can arrest William or Uhuru Kenyatta, or rather want to arrest Raila or arrest Uhuru Kenyatta, I've been saying that there is what is called the power of the people. It cannot be. I listened to the press briefing by Jubilee yesterday. The reality here is that you arrest either those, you will change the country into an action, or actually such a mass action. So it's something that borders on the power of the people. Now, Raila also have the power to profile some of these nations. Remember, there are those who have investments and other interests in the country. And so if they are to be profiled, remember the boycott stories are going on, how do you think that will turn out? But then, if you ask me, even the foreign nations, even the Western nations, understands well that the state is losing its popularity. I don't think that they cannot invest and they cannot have their own intelligence here to know very well that the cost of living is a problem. And by the way, not only in Kenya, but in Africa. It's a problem that Africa is battling with. And so, if Raila Odinga says that the cost of living is high, and the Kenyan population are protesting on that ground, it is not something that is shocking the Western nations. They know very well. Remember, some of these things are happening, or rather, the strain in Africa has partly been caused by the forces in Europe. So, because they're sensitive to these forces, the Russian and the Ukraine war that is going on, there were a lot of sanctions that were put there, and the flow, or rather the supply chain of grain was affected globally. Remember, Gachagua was saying that hatuna chakula, we don't have food. If you listen to what Gachagua said, he said we don't have food. So they also know very well that while the state might be dismissive on what the population is protesting about, but the Western nations know very well that indeed there is a problem. There is a problem. As to whether you choose to deal with, how you choose to deal with it is the difference. But in Africa, this is a problem. In Kenya, Kenya is not spared. And so they will not want to meddle. The other thing is this. They also understand, and we've been saying, it is the responsibility of the government to ensure safety and stability of the country. I have listened many times to those who are in government asking Raila that you are going to be responsible for what happens. The responsibility is in the lips. When you say he's going to be responsible, it just ends in saying. But if a responsibility is put into action to make sure that the person that bears that responsibility is the government of the day. So whether they can cry out and write a letter to ICC to come and execute, investigate the chaos here, the problem, it is not a responsibility of even the foreign nations to come and make sure you have stability here. It is not a responsibility of opposition. Those who are supposed to offer that security is the government of the day, but within the confines of the law. So some of these things also have to be understood because there is a context. Lastly, Raila also have international clout. You cannot underestimate that, and that can play a role into what. Do you think he doesn't have support? Do you think everyone supports William Ruto, everyone supports Raila Odinga? Yes. There's a faction that supports William Ruto, and there's a faction that supports Raila Odinga, especially the democratization of Africa. The process, when the history of democratization of Africa is written, his name appears somewhere. I think he was amongst the first presidential candidate to overturn. In Kenya, Supreme Court overturned a win of a president. That was the first of its kind in Africa. So we have a long way to go. And that's why I'm saying that it will not be. And I think don't expect that to happen. Raila is supposed to fly out. Yes. So that's my point.